How you doing? This is Coach DeCarlo. Today we're going to talk about Neville encounters, but I'm going to start off with telling you a story. Jesus tells a parable, and the parable is of two men who died, and one's in the bosom of what they call Abraham, and the other one's in this place called torment, or what we consider hell. And so the rich man says to Abraham, he says, "Father Abraham, send Lazarus over so that he can dip his hand in the water and give me something to drink." Abraham says, "There's a divide between us, and because of this divide, Lazarus can't come to you, nor can you come to him." And in saying this, you say, well, what does this have to do with Neville encounters? Well, let me finish the story and I'll explain. The rich man says this, "Listen, please send somebody from the dead back to the living. I have 5 brothers, and if somebody returned from the dead, then they would hear the message and they would repent so that they would not find themselves in this place that I'm in." Like I said, this is a parable, and that parable is really signifying, when we talk about the 5 brothers, that's your 5 senses. Abraham is, of course, the father of many nations, so this is a mindset. This is all of us are blessed with this inheritance once we come into the realization of who we are, and that was the difference between Lazarus and the rich man. The rich man just failed to understand who he was. It had nothing to do with his wealth. A lot of times people would say, well, it was because he was wealthy that he didn't enter into the kingdom. No, it was because he trusted in his wealth that he didn't enter into the kingdom. When we trust in those things outside of us to bring us salvation, then of course we find ourselves lacking. But when we discover that everything that we need is within us, then of course there is no lack. There is no need for somebody to mediate on our behalf, because of course we understand that we and Father, Source, God, infinite intelligence are one. Now, what does this have to do with Neville encounters? Well, Abraham told the rich man that even if somebody came from the dead and spoke to your brothers, they would not hear it. They would not change. They would not repent. Because, see, it's not a message that speaks to the ego, and as long as you're operating from a place of ego, you're not going to be able to receive it. But when you get to that place where you're opening your spirit to hear this message, you're going to hear the message. Now, what does this have to do with Neville encounters? Well, just this. Many of you say, if Neville was alive and I heard Neville speak in person, I would hear his message and, man, it would just transform my life. And I beg to differ. I don't believe so. If you're listening to Neville's messages day in and day out, and they're not having an impact, then the assumption that a live Neville would make that much difference is just not true. We have a lot of Nevilles in the world today. We have Wayne Dyer. We had Bob Proctor. My point is, we had Nevilles that weren't Nevilles, but they were of the same magnitude as far as power and their ability to change lives. And if people are not listening to Dr. Joe Spinenza, for example, and not changing, then if they're not listening to the message of Mr. Lindo, for example, and they're not changing or being transformed, then listening to Neville isn't going to make that much of a difference. But I'm going to tell you how to have a Neville encounter. This has worked for me countless times. I've actually encountered Neville quite a few times. When you're listening to a Neville talk, what I suggest to you is get into a place where you won't be disturbed, and you listen to Neville's talks as though you're in the audience. You begin to imagine yourself in the presence of everyone else sitting in the chairs and listening to the message and listening to the speaker, and then commit to doing what it is that he's told you to do. As you do that repeatedly, your subconscious mind is going to see your vision of Neville as a reality. And pretty soon you're going to start having encounters. You're going to have dreams about Neville. You're going to have times where you're actually talking to Neville because he's going to become so real to you. Then life change will take place. But until you have an encounter firsthand, it's all going to be hearsay, and you're going to always be chasing the proverbial carrot. I want to speak about the example of the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul did not meet Jesus face to face. But while he was out persecuting Christians, he had this encounter. And the voice said to the Apostle Paul, "Why do you persecute me?" And Saul stopped and he said, "Lord, who are you?" that I may know who it is that I'm persecuting. And he said, this is Jesus. Now, this was Jesus in Paul's imagination, but to Paul, this voice, this presence was as real to him as meeting Jesus face to face. And this is what I'm telling you to do. If you want to have a Neville encounter, if you're unable to meet Mr. Lindo face to face, or any of your great teachers, those people that you listen to that motivate you, that inspire you, and you're not able to meet them face to face, begin listening to their talks, watching their videos, and see yourself in their presence. See them talking to you. As you do this repeatedly, you're going to find that you're having encounters with these individuals. And it doesn't matter if these individuals are alive or dead. You're going to physically, in a spiritual realm, which is more real than this thing that we call reality. Again, as often said, this is a virtual reality. The real is the real in your imagination. So when you begin seeing this person, alive or dead, in your imagination, and you being in their presence, this is going to become real for you. And your subconscious mind is going to see this as an encounter. As you have these encounters, begin doing what it is that you're moved to do by having this encounter, and interact and be the person that you desire to be, as if you had spoken to this person face to face. And like I said, I've had a number of encounters with Neville, some sleep and some awake. And most of that started because when I was listening to his talks, he was talking to me. He wasn't talking somewhere in the 60s, the 70s. He wasn't talking in another time frame. He was current to me. And because he became current to me, he became real to me. And so his talks to me are speaking directly to me, and I receive it as such. You can do likewise, creator, but don't believe that you have to physically be in somebody's presence for life change. Life change is determined by you. And as I often say, that only you can create your perfect world, not God or man. Only you can create your perfect world. This is Coach DeCarlo saying have a great and abundant day.